Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's junior evening meeting. My name is Rebecca Mullen, and I'm the Counseling Department Chairperson at Greeley. We are so fortunate tonight to have with us a special guest speaker, Mr. Taylor Brown, the Associate Director of Undergraduate Admissions at Yale University. We look forward to hearing from Mr. Brown in a few minutes, but first tonight we're going to hear a message from Ms. Lisa Berman, President of the Horace Greeley Scholarship Fund. I'm then going to return for a few remarks before handing things off to Mr. Brown. Please know that we will have plenty of time for some questions and answers at the end. And if you're comfortable doing so, you can put your questions in the chat as we go along. And only the presenters will be able to see the questions that you're putting in there. And now I'm going to introduce Ms. Berman, who is president of the Horace Greeley Scholarship Fund.
Good evening. I'm so pleased to be here tonight to speak with you about the Horace Greeley Scholarship Fund. Again, my name is Lisa Berman, and I have the honor of serving as president of HGSF. For nearly 80 years, the Horace Greeley Scholarship Fund has been a vital financial resource for our community, helping Greeley graduates pursue their college dreams. We provide need-based financial awards to students and families who find that even after aid and savings, there's still a gap to cover the cost of college. Some of our guiding phrases are college is expensive and seniors helping seniors. Both capture our mission to bridge the financial gap for eligible Greeley graduates so that no student's future is limited by financial need. Two key messages for tonight. First, please remember that HGSF is here for you. If you anticipate financial challenges as your student prepares for college, we encourage you to apply. Applications available on hgsf.org are confidential and based solely on financial need. And importantly, our grants are not only for graduating seniors. HGSF also supports students throughout their 4 years of college. If your family has financial need at any point during the student's college journey, you're welcome to apply or reapply each year. Last year, through the incredible generosity of this community, we awarded $375,000 in grants to Greeley graduates. That's life-changing support, and with continued community partnership, we aim to meet even more of the need this year. Second, we hope that you'll join us in keeping HGSF strong through participation and giving. Our fall campaign kicked off in October, and our annual spring benefit will be held on March 26th. We hope to see many of you there. We also are deeply grateful to the Chappaqua School District for its continued support, particularly through the senior musical, which directly benefits the fund. Please follow us on social media and keep an eye out for updates about events and ways to give. Every contribution, large or small, helps to ensure that we can continue to serve as a financial lifeline for Greeley families. As you begin the college process, please keep HGSF in mind as both a resource and a cause worth supporting. Visit hgsf.org to learn more, to apply for a grant, or to make a donation. On behalf of our entire board, thank you to the Chappaqua community, families, students, and alumni whose generosity sustains our mission and ensures that every Greeley graduate has the opportunity to pursue higher education. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, Lisa. So we in the counseling office have had a very busy fall application season. You will hear some of those numbers in just a moment, but before we go there, I want to say that Greeley's success in this process is due in large part to our department's teamwork approach with each other, our families, and with our students. We just spent time this fall, as we always do, working with our college counseling colleagues on our professional development to help our students be successful. And here you can see us in a recent meeting with UC Santa Barbara and another one with the University of Wisconsin. Our meetings with them included reviewing case studies of applicants at various institutions and reviewing the most important factors in admissions, test scores. We read the case studies together, and then we decided as a group who gets in, who doesn't. And then of course, the college admissions counselor explains to us what really happened. And so it's really an incredible opportunity for us to understand this process from the ground up. And each year we do this with about 5 different colleges and universities, and we've been doing this for many years. We then spent a lot of time in the spring visiting 41 different colleges across 10 different states, and we do that every spring as well. The college process at Greeley happens really quickly, and it happens in a very busy way. So first, you will see that 94% of the class applied through some version of early admissions, which I'll share more about in just a minute. Out of that large percentage, 47% of the seniors applied through binding early decision. This means that a student found a school that was their clear number one choice, and they said, if accepted, I will absolutely agree to attend that college. By December break of last year, about 80% of our senior class had already been accepted to college, and that's before the regular decision deadline had even passed. So that's right, by this time next year, over 90% of your children will have applied to college. You will also notice that our students apply to way more colleges than just the 20 or so you hear about all the time. In fact, last year's class applied to 318 different colleges and wound up going to about 200. I'm going to show you in just a minute a list of all of the colleges that the students went to, but first, those of you that know me know what's coming. This is our annual game to guess the 10 most popular colleges for our Greeley students. So I'll give you a little hint. I'll go through the bottom 5 pretty quickly. So Stony Brook was number 10 last year, then Cornell, then Northeastern, UVA, University of Wisconsin, University of Michigan, not a surprise. I saw a lot of guesses when I did this in our last meeting. They thought Michigan was number 1. It's not. It's moved down the list a little bit. University of Maryland. We've had a new school break the top 3 this year. Any guesses? Penn State broke into the top 3. Number 2, Indiana University. And of course, the number 1 most popular college at Greeley, Binghamton. There it is. Here is a much wider list of the colleges that our students matriculated at. So again, our students apply to over 300 different schools, and they wind up going to over 200. And these are just a few of the schools here. Now I want to talk about junior year. Having just wrapped up the first quarter, there are some reminders we want to share about where your focus should be for the rest of the school year. First, it's very important to continue doing well academically. An upward trend in your grades over time can be even more powerful than a student's GPA. We also want you to remain involved in different activities so that when a college asks you how you spend your free time, you have a good answer for that. It's also important to think of 1 or 2 core teachers that you may wind up asking for a letter of recommendation at the end of this year. Think about it this way. You students are sitting in those classes right now, so help the teacher write the letter. And here's just a little tip. It is very hard for teachers to write letters about silent students. So it's a really good idea to push yourself to be a little more active this year if you're one of them. We also want you to think about planning when you're going to take your standardized test scores this winter and spring. And I'm going to talk about testing in 1 second. However, we do want everyone to test at least once, even though many of you will probably never send your scores to colleges, which I'll talk about in a minute too. So let me talk about test optional for a second. So on the right-hand side, we have a list of colleges that have moved back to requiring test scores. But the truth is that there are over 2,000 colleges and universities that still remain test optional. And you can see that list starting with Columbia. So I want to say a couple things. I think many of you just took the PSAT, which is the practice test for the SAT, and that score is coming out any day now. You have an opportunity to take the SAT or ACT, and every college accepts either one without preference. You have an opportunity to take one of those this winter, or you can plan to take it in the spring. And we are happy as your counselors to meet with you and figure out a testing schedule that makes sense for you. Since we don't know for sure if in 2 years certain colleges will have changed back or not, it probably is a good idea to take one of these tests at least once, but then talk with your counselor, because on the other side of the coin, most of these colleges that are test optional have been that way for almost 20 years and have no intention of going back. So let's see how you did on the PSAT. Maybe try an ACT, maybe try an SAT, talk with your counselor, and we will help you figure out the next steps, okay? But you should know that so many great schools have always been test optional, will continue to be test optional, and that is an incredibly great option as well. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about our work together with you in the counseling department. So it begins tonight as we outline for you some ways to approach this process, which Mr. Brown is going to talk about. Then on November 17th, we will begin meeting with your children in small junior groups. The times and locations of these meetings will be sent to them via Canvas. Some of the topics that we're going to cover in these groups will include teaching your children how to use SCORE, how to make a college list. We discuss the most important factors in college admissions, and we talk to them about their applications. These groups are really important because they give our students the tools needed to take charge of their own process. At the end of these groups, we will ask juniors to complete the junior questionnaire form. This is an opportunity for students to indicate for their counselor whether or not they have a major in mind they want to study, or a geographical location that's important to them, and whether or not they want to attend a school half the size of Greeley or 50 times the size. This information is vital for us to have a well-informed college meeting with our students and families. So we need to have that submitted prior to the scheduling of the college meeting. That can happen once the groups end at the end of January. Some families like to come in right away because maybe they haven't been through this process before, so they want to get an idea of where they should be applying for quickly. Other families want to wait until there's grades halfway through junior year. So whatever you're most comfortable with, you should do. I will be sending out a reminder inviting families to come in when it's that time. Then in the spring, we will be meeting again with the juniors, both to start their common application with them and to help them through their college essay. One of the most important things that's new starting this past spring was Dr. Ackerman's push to have the college essay written in English classes. So through that initiative, it started this year, and every junior English class is working on the college essay. And that's an awesome opportunity. The students have given such positive feedback about that. And at the same time, the juniors will be meeting with their counselors in small groups again, so that we can also help them with that as they're working through it, as well as we'll be starting their common applications with them. Then in August, we will send you all an email with step-by-step instructions for everything you need to do with the college process. And then starting in senior year, there's a whole other bunch of step-by-step things that we're going to do with you to help you through every step of this. Okay. I just want to share this document because everything I've talked about tonight is here, and it's linked by a QR code. So in the top right corner is a step-by-step timeline of junior year, everything we're going to do together, starting from signing up for the PSAT all the way through the beginning of senior year. And then there'll be another document that you'll see connecting you to senior year. Below, there's also an opportunity for junior parents to start writing their junior parent statement, which gives the counselor just more information about your child as we start to craft their letter of description. And if you're interested in seeing the school profile, you can also click that or scan that QR code. I am going to send this presentation to everyone tomorrow morning, so you'll be able to see this again. And with no further ado, I am so honored to introduce Associate Director Brown. He is one of the most well-respected members of the college counseling and higher education business. And so he brings a decade of experience in highly selective college admissions. He currently serves as an associate director of undergrad admissions at Yale University, where he oversees all applications from Staten Island, Long Island, Westchester, including us, Rockland County, and upstate New York. Prior to joining Yale in 2024, Taylor spent 5 years at Wesleyan University and began his admissions career at Gettysburg College. Originally from New Jersey, he holds a bachelor's degree from Lafayette College and a master's degree in higher education from Harvard University. Taylor is a longtime advocate of expanding access and opportunity in higher education and is delighted to speak with you today about how to navigate the college application process. And with that, I turn it over to you, Taylor.
All right. Thank you so much, Rebecca. And thank you so much for having me. I'm just really excited to be here to help demystify what can be a very stressful and complicated process. And so hopefully you'll be able to log off this evening having a better sense of how to move forward as you start this process. So I'm just going to share my screen here. All right. So navigating this whole college admission process. Of course, thank you for your introduction, Rebecca. Just as a recap, I've been in the college admission world for my entire career. I've spent some time at Wesleyan University and Brandeis University reading applications for them, and at Gettysburg College as well. And of course, I've attended two different institutions, of which neither I've worked for. So I've really made my rounds when it comes to the college world. And it's interesting because being at every place really gives you a sense of how each place is different and how the application process looks different from place to place, but also the core values that bind them all. So I'm happy to answer questions throughout the evening about anything that you might have on your mind with respect to admission to any type of college you might be interested in. So my agenda for this evening, I'm going to give you guys just a little bit of a snapshot about Yale. And if you'd like to learn more about our institution, you're welcome to attend one of our full-length information sessions online. We have them both virtually and in person. We're going to talk a little bit about how to figure out how to find your best fit college, how to understand what holistic admission review, what that is, and how colleges employ that when they make admission decisions. We'll talk about how to put your best foot forward in how to craft an application that is going to be compelling to admissions committees. We'll talk about some of the myths that are very pervasive on the internet and elsewhere. So hopefully that you can get that more accurate information. And then I'll share some final thoughts and reflections, things that I've learned during my years in the profession. And then from there, we can just jump right into any questions that you have. So the quick and dirty overview of Yale University. So this is a school that I love this place. I've been there for about a year now. I've just been really impressed by the students and the faculty and the campus. So we're a university of about 15,000 students in total. That's undergraduate and graduate alike. We're located in New Haven, Connecticut. We like to think of it as being a big city and also a college town at the same time. It's a very culturally and artistically rich place. It's also the pizza capital of the US. So I encourage you to come to campus for a tour. And then within Yale University, about half the students are split between 14 different graduate and professional schools. And then the other half are undergraduate, and those students are all a part of Yale College. And so Yale College is the beating heart of Yale University with 6,500 students and over 80 different majors and certificates, which is just our version of minors. And the last thing to note is that we're a residential community as well. So we have what's called our residential college system. So all the students who come into Yale, they get randomly assigned into one of 14 different residential colleges. It's kind of like the house sorting system in Harry Potter. And this is your residential college throughout your 4 years. So you're required to live on campus the first 2 years, but most of our students live throughout. And then if you're interested in applying to Yale, we have 2 different admission rounds. We have our regular decision application, which is due January 2nd, and you'll hear back from us in late spring. And then if you know that Yale is a school that's really high on your list, we have what's called single choice early action. Some of you may have heard of early action and early decision at different colleges, early decision being binding and early action not being binding. So if you're admitted, you're not obligated to enroll. Yale kind of goes in the middle. So the way single choice early action works is that if you're admitted to Yale early, you are not bound to enroll. But if you apply early action single choice to Yale, you're not permitted to apply early action or early decision to any other private American college. So those are the two different options. And then for financial aid, what you should know is that we practice what's called a need-blind admission process, meaning that we never consider your ability to pay when making admission decisions. You should know that all of our financial aid is need-based, and we guarantee to meet 100% of every student's demonstrated need without the use of loans. And if you want to get a sense of how much Yale is going to cost should you be admitted, every college is required by law to have what's called a net price calculator on their website. You insert all your financial information and out pops an estimate. And we also have a new tool called the Instant Cost Estimator right on our website. There's a snapshot of it below. And you literally just hover your mouse over your household income, and it gives you your best estimate of what Yale would cost should you be admitted. And if you want to learn more about Yale and our admission process specifically, we also have a fantastic podcast. It's called Inside the Yale Admissions Office. So that's Yale. And now to talk just a little bit more broadly about how to go about finding your best fit college. So I know that this could be stressful. I know it could be overwhelming, right? There are 2,600 plus different four-year colleges and universities throughout this country, and they're all very different, right? And the United States has more colleges per capita than any other country by far. And so it could be a little bit difficult to try to narrow things down. So here are just general points as you begin this adventure. The first thing you should remember is that for the students, you'll want to be independent in this process. Colleges don't want to hear from parents and guardians and friends. They want to hear directly from you. And you should also make sure that while you can seek input from your friends and from your family, and you certainly can and should, you should remember that in this process, you are the one who is in the driver's seat. And it's really the first time in your life where you might have to think really deeply about what it is that matters to you, what kinds of schools you are looking for, how you want to go about approaching your college search. And so my advice would be to start, instead of thinking about individual colleges right off the bat, just based upon what colleges you've heard of, think about general attributes that you're looking for, right? This could be majors or programs. This could be proximity to your home. This could be public or private. Maybe you are interested in a school of a certain size or a culture. Maybe you're looking for a school that has an urban setting or a rural or a suburban setting. So think about those broad attributes, and that can help you to start developing a list of colleges. The good news is that there are a lot of tools that are at your disposal, right? So there are a variety of search engines that you can use, like Big Future. Also, in addition to college search engines you can find online, this is actually a really appropriate use of artificial intelligence, right? You go into ChatGPT and say, hey, I'm interested in colleges that have all of these different attributes. Can you give me a list of schools within this radius that might be of interest to me for me to visit, right? So there are lots of ways that you can start building your list. It's important that you're organized in this process as well. Personally, I like using spreadsheets. So, I would put together a spreadsheet of all the different attributes that are important to me. I would have a list of all the schools and what each school looks like for each of those categories that I delineated. It's also really useful to create a separate email just where you can get all of your college emails and communications. It's just a really easy way to keep things compartmentalized so that it's not too overwhelming. And so the more organized you are in this process, the less overwhelmed you will feel. And then my last thing that I want to mention about this is that try to avoid the sense of, this is my dream school, or this is the only school that is the one for me. The reality is that there are many schools at which you can be successful, and there's no one single best fit college. It's not, you're not proposing marriage to these colleges, right? There are lots of different places that can suit your needs. So be broad and be open-minded, right? So don't limit your search just to schools that you've heard of or your friends or your family tell you that you should apply to. Do some research on your own and see what colleges are out there, because the reality is that for most colleges, you've probably never even heard of 95% of the colleges out there. So have an open mind as you go through this search. Now, once you have figured out where you want to apply, I think when it comes to admissions, and specifically for highly selective institutions such as Yale, it's important to recognize that most of us practice what we refer to as a holistic review. And so what that means is we are looking at a lot of different factors together, and we're not operating on the basis of rules, right? So there's no specific set of extracurriculars, there's no particular GPA, particular SAT. Every single application that is admitted to Yale is going to be discussed, right? We're going to think about all the different pieces of your application, from your transcripts to your recommendation letters and everything in between. And so all of the factors that go into the admission process, into this holistic review process, generally fall into one of three categories. There's quantitative insights. These are the things you know, right? GPAs, test scores, things that can be counted, things that are numerical. Qualitative insights. These are the more intangible parts of your application, right? What you are like in the classroom, the impact you've had on your community, your thoughtfulness in your essays. So these are the qualitative insights that help to inform our decisions. And then there are contextual insights. And I think this is the piece that a lot of students forget. And what this refers to is the fact that we're not reviewing applicants in a vacuum, right? So we're going to be reviewing every application within the context of their school, within the context of their personal circumstances, within the context of the resources that have been made available to them. And just to give you an example of this, if I'm looking at a student who has taken 2 AP courses at a school that offers 2 AP courses, that's different than if I'm looking at a student who's taken 2 AP courses that offers 30 AP courses, right? So we're always thinking about what is the context from which a student is applying, because that helps to inform our whole person evaluation. So those are the three types of criteria that highly selective colleges will bake into their holistic review process. And to give you a sense of what I'm talking about with respect to context, this is your context, right? So every single high school, every high school from that students are applying from, they're going to send us what's called a school profile. This is a document that your counseling team puts together, and this gives me a little bit of an insight into where you're coming from. So when I look at your high school profile, the things that jump out to me are that you have a class size of about 300 students. Almost all of the students are pursuing higher education. We can see what your mean SAT score is. We can see a GPA distribution, even though we don't have exact rank. And we can also see the courses that are made available, from your AP courses to the IB courses that you now offer through your new life school, and then also all the different clubs and organizations that you have. And so this really helps to inform the way that we read your transcript. And I'll often go to the school profile before I jump into the transcript so that I know what it is that I am looking at. So this piece is actually a really important part of our process. So what can you do on your side of things? So all the criteria that colleges look for, at least for Yale and for other highly selective places as well, it generally falls into one of three categories: academic strength, community impact, and reflection and insight. And so we'll talk about each of these things and some of the myths that tend to be associated with each of them. So with respect to academic strength, this is the part that I think you might think is the most simple, but there are also a lot of myths associated with this as well. So places like Yale, they're typically looking for students who are doing well in their coursework, right? They're getting high grades, they're taking challenging courses, but there are some pervasive myths, right? So one is that you must take every single advanced course that your school has to offer, whether you're interested or not, whether you are interested or not, whether you're going to do well in it or not. And that is just not true. You do not have to take every single class. Do we look for students who are taking rigorous curricula in general? Yes. Are we looking for students who've challenged themselves in a variety of academic subjects? Yes. But what I'm not doing is I'm not looking at your transcript and sitting there with a little tally and tallying up the number of APs that you've taken and thinking to myself, oh, the student who took 12 APs must be better than the one who's taken 11. We do not think about the admission process or transcripts in that way. We do think about academic preparedness and a willingness of a student to challenge themselves, but we're not going to be so minute with respect to what we need to see on a transcript. I think another pervasive myth is that colleges have some kind of GPA or SAT cutoff. Like I said, we don't operate on the basis of rules. A lot of students will ask me, what's the average GPA of a student admitted to Yale? That's a very challenging question to answer, because it would be like if I were in a classroom and I wanted to figure out what the average height in the room was, but I measured some of you in yards and some of you in inches and some of you in feet, and then I tried to average them all together. It would be something of a meaningless number. Every school has a different GPA scale. I've seen weighted, unweighted, 10-point scales, 100-point scales, 4-point scales. So GPA can be a very blunt instrument because it's school specific, and also because it does not tell me the full story of your academic trajectory, right? So your counselor said earlier this evening, upward grade trend is something that matters, right? GPA does not capture that. And so I'm really looking at the entirety of your academic record, the courses that you've taken, the grades that you've gotten over time, what your rigor has looked like over the course of your 4 years. That is much more informative than just looking at the blunt instrument that is GPA. And the same goes for the SAT as well. I think one of the most pervasive myths in college admission is that the SAT or the ACT is the most important part of your application. It is not. The SAT is a test that you took one morning on a Saturday for a few hours. It gives me a perspective into your academic preparation, but its importance pales in comparison to the 4 years of day-to-day work that your transcript reflects. I think a lot of folks think that the SAT is most important just because, it's a number. It's easy to wrap your head around it. But the reality is that if your SAT is the most interesting part of your application, then it's probably not a very compelling application as a whole, right? So does it matter? Yes. Does it count? Yes. But is it the center of your application? Not at all. I have admitted students with, I've rejected students with a 1600. I've admitted students with scores far below that. And if I actually went into the admissions committee room and I started pitching a case for a student by saying, look at their SAT score, I would be laughed out of the room. That is not what makes for a good case. So, when it comes to testing, obviously make sure that you put in the time to prepare for it, but don't let it overwhelm you. Don't take the SAT 3 times, 4 times, 10 times. Once you get past a certain point, your time is best spent on other parts of your application. So standardized testing, transcript, school profile, those things are all evaluated with respect to the academic strength part of your application. Now, when it comes to the community impact, right? So this is what you're doing outside the classroom. How are you going to add to the community? I think myths really run wild in this category. And there's a lot of terminology that exists on the internet that did not come from us or any other school that I know of, right? And so here are some examples. We are looking for a student that has a specialty or a spike, or we're looking for a student that is perfectly well-rounded. Folks will often ask me, which type of student are we looking for? My somewhat obnoxious answer to that question is yes. I have advocated for both types of students. And when I'm presenting a student to committee, for every student, there's something different that I might be hanging my hat on when I'm making my case, right? Maybe it is the enthusiasm from all your recommenders. Maybe it is your musical talent or your athletic talents. Maybe it is research that you've done or the work that you've done on your debate team or your local religious organization or Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts or your part-time job. There's an endless number of ways that you can engage in your community. And I do not have a grocery list of activities that I'm looking for. And I'm never going to penalize you for something that's not in the application, right? So I'm not going to think to myself, why, yes, this student has done really amazing work for their school newspaper, but they've never played a sport, so they're just not well-rounded enough for us. That is not how the process looks. What we are looking for is that you've chosen a few things that you care deeply about and that you've been involved in those things in ways that allow you to showcase your initiative, your leadership, and your impact, right? What we're not looking for is superficially joining 10 different clubs just because you think it's going to look good to a college. Pursue the things that matter to you. It's going to be more fun for you. It's going to be more fulfilling for you. And it's going to help you just in terms of your own personal growth. So don't try to curate a resume that you think we need to see. And while we're on that note, you don't need to be a published researcher. You don't have to have a quote unquote passion project that is language of the internet that does not come from us. And no, you do not have to be the founder of a nonprofit. This has been pervasive for a long time, and I'll always get the nonprofit question when I'm visiting high schools. That is not something that we expect to see on an application. Be authentic, be involved in the things that you want to be involved in. You don't need to be winning a Nobel Prize in order to make for a successful or compelling application. So this last piece of the puzzle, reflection and insight, this is probably the most intangible part of the application. A lot of it comes from recommendation letters, but a lot of it also comes from the essays as well. And the best essays, generally speaking, these are ones that showcase self-awareness and reflectiveness and thoughtfulness. The best essays tell us something about who you are, something that's not already on your application. It's not meant to be a resume rehashing, right? You don't have to have an essay that really forcefully tells me what your accomplishments are. First of all, that's just not necessary and doesn't tell me about who you are as a person. But also, I can see what your concrete accomplishments are just by virtue of the other parts of the application. So you don't have to do a resume rehashing. You don't have to write a story that pulls at the heartstrings or have some kind of quote unquote sob story. The best essays just tell us something about who you are, right? And I've read great essays about every single topic under the sun. It could be something simple. It could be something about your family. It could be about an experience you've had or an aspiration that you hold. My advice is to write an essay on a topic that is of importance to you, right? And if it's important to you, it's going to be easier for you to write, and it's going to be easier for me to read. And then last note I want to make on this subject is that I've been getting lots of questions lately about artificial intelligence and how, well, do these essays matter? Because you can just go into chat and get a lovely curated essay. Here's the thing about that. First, sometimes it's easy to tell if an essay is artificially generated. There's a certain cadence to artificial intelligence essays. But the more important piece to this is that the things that we're looking for, self-awareness and emotional intelligence and maturity and learning about who you are, ChatGPT can't do that, right? It might produce an essay that is, grammatically and structurally sound, but it's not going to be a thoughtful piece of writing that's going to make for a compelling essay. So, artificial intelligence is not going to be a ticket to any kind of effective essay for highly selective schools. So choose something that means something to you, put in the time to write about it and how it's important to you or your overall application, and it's going to be something that I'm interested in reading. So some thoughts that I have, as I travel the country, and I've probably visited, I don't know, collectively over my 10 years, maybe 500 different high schools throughout the United States. They all have different cultures when it comes to applying to college. But there are a lot of places where I've seen a very high stress culture. And so these are some thoughts that I've accumulated from that time. So the first thing is that these admission decisions, they are not personal. And they should never inform your self-worth, right? I think there was one parent I met a few years ago, and she said to me, "I'm really nervous about this college process. It feels like the parenting final exam." And when I heard that, I just thought to myself, I couldn't believe it, that this is where we were now when it comes to the stress of college applications. It is not the parenting final exam. The college process is about finding a school where you are going to grow and where you are going to thrive. It is not about getting into the highest ranked school. It's not about getting into the most selective school. It's not about getting the best bumper sticker for your mom's minivan, right? It's about finding a school where you are going to do well and where you are going to grow, right? And these decisions, selectivity, it's only a function of how many applications we have versus how many beds that we have. There are many students who I would love to admit to Yale that I can't just because we don't have room. There are actually students who I advocated to committee and I tried to get the votes to get them in, and I was not successful. Not every student who is admitted to Yale is admitted unanimously. Not every student who is rejected to Yale is rejected unanimously. These are human decisions. They are subjective decisions. We're not gods on Mount Olympus making these decisions. We are just people trying to make the best and most informed and thoughtful decisions that we can about who we would most like to join the community. It is not a reflection of whether or not you can succeed in college. It's not a reflection of whether or not the admission officer, quote unquote, liked you. And so you should never think of these decisions as being defining. And so the last piece of advice I have is that in light of all of this, as you are navigating this whole college search, remember that A, there's a school for everybody, and B, where you go to college is not nearly as important as what you do where you go. If you have an ambition and you have the wherewithal to pursue that ambition, you are going to be successful with or without Yale or whatever other school is your top choice. So don't fixate on why you didn't get into a place. Don't fixate on what your spread of admission decisions is and what that means. Just know that it's going to work out, and there is a college that is going to be a good fit for you. And so if you spend this last year of high school, well, I guess you're a junior, if you spend these last 2 years of high school, spend it as a high school junior and spend it as a high school senior rather than spending it as a college applicant. And if you do that, you are going to be much happier for it. So give this process the time and energy it deserves, but don't let it consume you, and have a balanced life along the way. So hopefully your best fit college will be Yale. But if it's not Yale or it's not wherever else you're looking, then that's fine too. So take a deep breath and know that it's going to work out. And so with that, I appreciate your time and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you so much, Taylor. So now I'm going to turn it over to my two colleagues, John Brennan and Sarah Lewis, who are going to be reading through the Q&A. So if anyone has questions for either Taylor or the counseling department, please feel free to put them in and we'll start working through them.
So I'm just going to start by introducing myself. I'm John Brennan, one of the counselors, and Sarah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Lewis. I'm one of the other school counselors as well. Thank you so much for joining tonight.
Mr. Brown, thank you for the inspirational thoughts and very good tempo and sort of framing for our students and parents. A question, just from your different experiences at the other schools that you've had, can you just explain a little bit about the difference between early decision to early action, and maybe throw in what Yale has again? I know you spoke to it earlier, but for the early decision part for some of our parents that maybe are going through this the first time.
Sure. So I've worked at schools that have both early decision and early action, so I can speak to both. So early decision means that you know that this is your top school. If you are applying early decision and you are admitted, it is expected that you, in all good faith, will do everything that you can to enroll at that school. And so the deadline for that is typically November, but there are some schools that have multiple rounds of early decision. And then early action is not binding. So you apply early, you get a decision usually in December, and you can continue on applying to colleges and then compare offers from all the different schools in the spring. So the question is, why would you apply early decision? Why would you apply early action? So for early action, it's easy, right? For early action, it's not binding, so it's much, if you're able to put together a compelling application early, then you might as well. If you're applying early decision, you have to be a little bit more careful because of that binding element. And so the trade-off here is that for colleges that offer early decision, there is often, not always, but there is often an admission advantage associated with that. The extent of that advantage varies from school to school, but you should ask that question to every individual college. If you know that a school, if you don't want to apply early decision, there's no pressure to do that. Most colleges, the majority of their applicant pools come from regular decision. So for Yale, like I said, we kind of go in the middle of the road. So it is early action single choice. And so the way this works is that it's not binding, but you are not able to apply early action or early decision to any other private American college. If it's overseas, that's fine. If it's a public school, that's fine. If it's an early decision process, but it releases after January 1st, that's also fine. You are just not able to apply early action single choice to Yale and one of those other private colleges with an early admission program. So I know it's a little bit of, it's a lot of jargon and terminology between regular decision and early action single choice and ordinary early action, but you'll want to make sure that you look at the website for every college to see what the advantages might be to applying early at that school, whether it's for admission or financial aid. I can tell you for Yale, there's no advantage to applying early action single choice, nor is there an advantage with respect to financial aid, particularly because all of our financial aid is need-based. So most schools have some form of early or regular, or if they don't, there are some schools that also have what's called rolling admissions, where there's no firm deadline and you could submit applications on a continuous basis throughout the cycle.
Thank you for that response. Just one follow-up for the good of the group. If you apply to a school early decision, you cannot apply to two schools early decision. If you get into that one, as Mr. Brown said, you have to go to it. I have one more question for you, Taylor, then Ms. Lewis is going to ask a different question. Can you just speak a little bit to demonstrated interest and how that maybe comes into play for some schools and then for others it may not? And I think you were at one or two that maybe did do that and one or two that sort of didn't do that.
Yep.
Just for everyone to know the demonstrated interest, just maybe give like a quick snapshot of what that means kind of in your world. Thank you.
Yeah, so here's a little bit of admission insider secrets, right? So colleges want a high percentage of the students they admit to enroll. This is called the yield rate. You're probably familiar with the acceptance rate, the percentage that are admitted, but the percentage of admitted students that enroll is called the yield. And so this is kind of like the insider terminology that admission officers think about. And one way of thinking about that is demonstrated interest. And so colleges will take into consideration, or at least some will, whether or not you have visited campus, whether or not you have done a virtual information session, whether you have, sometimes it's even, have you opened emails from them? Sometimes it's really granular. And so if there's a school you're considering that utilizes demonstrated interest, I would encourage you to make sure that you are engaging with them. But the big but here, just because a school uses demonstrated interest does not mean that you should inundate them. Like, don't send 10 emails to your admission officer thinking of that. The more emails you send them without purpose, the more likely you are to get in. That is not the way to think about demonstrated interest. What it is a good way of thinking about it is that it's a way for you to learn more about the college, because schools, even if a school is not affirmative of demonstrated interest, attending those sessions, visiting campus, that could still be really helpful in terms of understanding what the school is all about, and that can help you to craft a stronger application. So even if your engagement with the school is not helping the application in and of itself, what you learn from doing that can help you.
Thank you very much. That was very helpful and a great explanation. There's a few questions that I'm seeing in the Q&A, and just a reminder that that is there in case you have any questions that you would like us to answer or that you would like Mr. Brown to answer. There are a few questions about college visits. We in the counseling office encourage our students and families, of course, when possible and if possible, to go and visit college campuses, to gather their preferences. If a student or parent cannot visit a college, or even if they can, there's questions regarding college visits to our high school. So I'm going to group those all together and just note that we usually have about 200 different colleges that come through Greeley's doors every fall. We are just wrapping up our college visits for the year. They start in September. They typically end right around this time in November. So we've had many different admissions counselors and representative from a lot of different schools come to visit with students. There might be some juniors on this call tonight that have attended some of those college meetings and visits. There might be juniors that did not attend, and that's absolutely okay. Seniors, very important for you to attend next year in the fall. That's a great way of meeting who is typically our first read on our high school's applications. Mr. Brown would be a great example of that. As the representative from Yale for Westchester, a representative admissions counselor that visits Greeley would be usually the first read of the application. It's a great way to learn more about a school if you can't visit, to reinforce what you know and like about the school already from a potential visitor, your research, and to meet that person, in a small group setting and ask some individualized questions. So I'm not sure if there's anything else that you want to add on to that, but I wanted to answer a couple of questions that we're seeing about college visits coming into Greeley.
So I guess just to jump to another question here, a couple of people, and I'll just answer this one, a couple have followed up on the ED. If there's questions about financial aid, families will have had conversations with the colleges, the financial aid folks. They'll have done the EFC calculator, the net calculator, as Mr. Brown shared earlier. So there's a lot of opportunity for education and getting a sense of what that would look like. If a family wanted to put all their cards on the table and see all the different admissions with financial aid packages, then they would not do early decision. That's a very specific sort of situation for you and your child that you would have a conversation and talk to your counselor about. Another thing I just wanted to touch on that was a couple have asked about the teacher recs. Like, should we be asking now? The teacher recs is something that will come a little bit later on in the spring. You want to really have your child, for the student, have the opportunity to get to know their teacher over the course of the year. So it's not something that is done now. That would be in the spring. Ms. Lewis, did you have another question?
Yes, I'm seeing a few really good questions in the Q&A. And just to follow up on that, this is, again, not the best time to be asking teachers for letters yet, but a great time for juniors to start thinking about who those letters should be from. We are concluding the first quarter. As they go through the next couple of months and into the spring semester, which is a more appropriate time to ask for letters, it's a great time to, again, like what was said earlier in the presentation, to be more vocal in class, to build those relationships with their current junior year teachers. So I just wanted to add that. And a follow-up on those college visits, it's absolutely okay if juniors were not able to attend those visits. As a senior, it's certainly important. All college visits are available. The calendar is on SCORE. Junior students do have access to SCORE, and as seniors, you'll be using it even more. So next year is certainly even more important for those college visits. I'm sorry.
I have one here for Mr. Brown. If you have applicants that seem to have a very similar profile, can you just speak to Yale and past, Wesley and just the competitive schools like that? Maybe I'm sure you've had a parent or two ask the similar question to you at a fair or on a visit, but if you could just speak to sort of like how that works and when there's that similar profile.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the challenge with that question is that the premise of it is that when we're reviewing applications, it is in some sort of head-to-head comparison where we are looking at Johnny's application and Susie's application side by side and choosing between one or the other. And that's not generally how it works. It's instead of Johnny versus Susie, it's Johnny versus the pool and Susie versus the pool. We're going to look at every application individually. If this is an application who I am presenting to the committee, it's someone who is competitive and someone who I want to advocate for. And there are lots of students who we admit who have similar interests, right? I've admitted multiple students per year, for example, who are really interested in being pre-med, right? There are lots of pre-med students who apply to Yale. And we can admit students who have similar interests. Now, I would say sometimes there are students that are really unique in the context of the entire pool, and that's something worth noting, and I'll bring that up to the committee. But we have no qualms about admitting students who might be similar to each other if they're both bringing something really impactful for the community. So in short, it's not a head-to-head kind of combat. I know sometimes there are exercises that are done in high school, like admission case study programs, where you might be given 3 different applicants and you admit one, waitlist one, reject one. And while that's a really great exercise to get an idea as to what we look for, it creates that perception that we are comparing single applications against each other directly, and that's just not how it operates.
So Taylor, there's one last question I just want to answer. We get asked it all the time, but I'd love to hear your perspective. A student is saying that he's in an AP class that he enjoys, but it's really affecting his GPA because he's struggling. What should he do? Should he stay in it or should he consider dropping it?
Yeah, so it's the age-old question of B in AP class or A in regular class, or some variation on that theme. So my advice is, and this is generally speaking, take the most challenging course load take a course load that is challenging enough to be challenging to you and to push you to grow, but not to the point where you are hitting a breaking point, or a point where you're getting a C or a D in the class, and it is pulling on your mental health and your well-being. It is okay if this is a class that it is better for your mental health to decide to drop that class for the sake of doing better in your other classes and just having a healthier life. That is okay. Now, if a course is challenging you a little bit and pushing you, and maybe it's the first time that you've had to hustle a little bit more, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's good to be challenged, but there's a line at which it's no longer productive, and you have to figure out for yourself where that line is.
That's really helpful. Thank you. Okay, we're just at 8 o'clock. So I want to thank Taylor so much. That was an awesome presentation, super helpful. And thank you to my colleagues for helping out. And I hope everybody has a good night. Thank you so much.